Good morning, Kelly King
Good
Jack.
morning.
How are
Good
you?
morning. I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to participate in this conversation with Black women who coach. And I always ask this is the first question. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes. So again, Kelly King Jackson, she, her, hers. I have been in the nonprofit sector for 20 years. First 10 being with a direct service organization doing policy advocacy work, and then transitioned over into philanthropy. So I've been working for a foundation. I live in Houston and am one of the first in my family to remigrate back down to the South. So
All
it's
right.
been a dope journey.
Cool. And we already have something in common because before I exited, as I like to tell people, exited the American rat race and skedaddled to Mexico, I worked in the nonprofit sector for over 20 years in HR and
Mm.
operations. So we have that in common. So that's pretty cool. I'm sure we have lots of stories we could exchange.
We do.
So what inspired you to be a coach?
Primarily having had a coach. So when I came into philanthropy, it was a level of wealth and a level of whiteness that was just different. I actually went to prep school, but I went to with school with hippies, so it was a different environment. And I was given a coach through a fellowship that I did, and it completely blew my mind open and changed how I showed up and how I found my voice in my work.
Wonderful. So in your opinion, would you say why would you say coaching is important? Because obviously it is.
Yeah, particularly for women of color and Black women, because that's where I focus. We often don't get space to vision and strategize around our careers. And so I think it's really important to have someone that asks you those powerful questions that get you to think about where are you headed in your career and how do you want to show up in that and be who you're trying to be in your work.
And why would you say having a Black woman coach matters? What's the value add to that, if any, that you can think of?
Particularly if you are in a predominantly white space, it is really helpful to have a Black woman as your coach who really understands, and you don't have to spend that coaching time explaining. You're
Mhm.
not explaining microaggressions. You're not explaining decisions about how to wear your hair. You're not explaining how to talk about your lived reality and how it's showing up in the work and how the work is impacting things you've experienced in your life. So I think it's really helpful that there's a level of understanding that folks can not have to do that labor when they're really trying to use their coaching time.
And yeah, I always tell people for me, it was a very affirming experience because I had had coaches who were not Black and were not Black women before. And it was
Mm-hmm.
a very different experience for me having a Black woman as my coach because, as you said, I didn't have to explain things. I told her things and she understood exactly what the concern was, where in other instances, people were kind of like, didn't get it. And so it was all, maybe you need to do this differently. Um,
Yeah.
and she was kind of like, this is what this is, and this is
Mm-hmm.
how, and these are things that you can do to deal with it. But the fact of the matter is, this is what your environment is. And that's a very different experience when someone is able to identify with you in terms of what your experience is in the workplace.
100%. I also think some of what coaches who don't have lived experience being a Black woman in some of these spaces is they're teaching us, helping us think about how to show up around things that have nothing to do with us, right? So
Right.
I can do all the ways of dressing to show up as respectable and still
Right.
get that unnecessary critique, right? And so having someone affirm, look, sis, you can do all these things and you are still where you are, and you need to decide if this is where you want to be and how will you manage around that?
Right.
Because the culture is what it is.
Yeah, the structure is what it is and the culture is what it is. So, what qualities would you tell someone to look for in terms of finding the coach that's right for them? How would you advise a potential client to think about that?
Yeah, I encourage folks to try to get like a mini session to get a feel for flow. I put a lot of content on my website, but I still tell folks, like, you should talk to multiple people because we all show up differently in how we coach. Yes, I'm a certified coach and I went through the coaching program, and I have taken other classes. And so I bring in modalities around doing ancestor worship. Oh, not worship, ancestor, like work, if you will. And so some people may not be comfortable with that, may not want to, see how the legacy and the experience of their grandmothers are impacting and are a tool for them in this work, right? I do some parts work. Some people don't want to think about where this part of them showed up. And so I think as you're talking to folks, ask them, what type of tools and techniques do you use in coaching? Ask them, what does Blackness mean in a coaching space? Ask them about, the types of training that they've had, and be clear with yourself. I tell folks, like, the older I get, the Blacker I get.
Girl.
And so that's not how some people want to show up at work. Yeah. And so I try to be really clear about that. Like, we're going to be unapologetically Black here, and we're going to say the thing. And I'm not going to ask you questions that are going to make you silence your voice and be smaller. Yes. I actually want us to take up more space in the places we are.
I mean, I think there is an audacity to being authentic, especially in the American experience. And I don't see how a person can be, what I've learned is that you cannot be fully happy if you're not allowed to be your authentic, unapologetic, and free self. And you can't be free if you can't do those other two things. So if you are existing in environments that don't allow you to do that, you have to figure out what you need to do to allow yourself to do the things, to do that if you want to be free. And that's the question, right? If you want to be free. And some of us may never get there, but for those of us that do, then the question becomes, can I continue to exist in this kind of environment and structure if I'm not allowed to be my full self and my best self? And how can you be your best self if you cannot be authentic? And you have to be apologizing for who you are and making yourself smaller and smaller so other people can feel big.
Listen, let me tell you, if your sole purpose of having a coach is to get a promotion, I'm not the right coach for you. And you will see that very quickly, because that's not the way that I show up in the conversation. I really am helping you tap into your inner knowing as a Black woman and say, if I stay in this place, what does that mean for me? Because I want us to be in choice about everything, right? Whether you stay, leave, move up, whatever the case may be, but that we don't silence that voice anymore, and that we're saying, okay, I've been here, I've taken what I can take, and now I'm needing to think through what are really the things that I want for myself and my community, because I also don't coach to only the individual, right? I think that our liberation is tied into the liberation of Black people in a bigger way.
You're absolutely correct, because, one of my favorite sayings is, the function of freedom is to free somebody else, as Toni Morrison said. And if you are really free, then you have no choice but to seek the freedom of other people that look like you, right? As a Black person, if you're truly free, right? And so there's no way that if you're being serious about, pursuing your own personal freedom, that you would not want to see other people in the similar. It's why I do what I do now. Because I want people to know that they actually do have the choice to make these decisions that, like what I made. And there's nothing magical about what I did. I just decided that I was choosing my own personal freedom and not something, and that I was not going to stay in environments that were not going to allow me to be free. So
that's the word.
It's like we have to make a choice, and then you equip yourself with the tools. And for me, part of that was having 2 Black women coach me. I would not be sitting here now but for that. So to me, that's why I really want women, especially Black women, particularly Black women, to understand that they are Black women that are doing this work, and that they should avail themselves of your services if you wish to be free. Because as I said, if you wish to just function in these environments more effectively, then you could probably hire anybody. Right. But if you wish to be free and to function, even to function in those environments, but as a free person, because that's a whole different kind of thing, then you do need to hire a Black woman to coach you, because I'm sorry, I just don't think that a white person is going to be able to get you there. I don't think anyone that's not Black, and specifically not a Black woman, is going to be able to get you there if that is in fact what you're after.
What you're working toward, yeah.
Now, you kind of answered this question, and I'm going to ask anyway, but I'm going to ask it because I love to hear the direct answer, is what kind of person should hire you as their coach? And you kind of have answered it, but I want to hear you say it again.
Yeah, it is the person that is ready to be liberated, right? And whatever that means for you, I put my sign up, love and freedom, because that's really what I'm coaching toward. You know, how we show up in our relationships and the work that we do, how is that showing self-love and love for community? And then how is that getting us further along on this freedom journey, right? It's not going to be a moment of freedom. This is going to be a journey of freeing ourselves from socialization, right? My mom's a baby boomer, right? There are ways that she taught me to show up at work that were not serving me,
right, and
were keeping me in bondage. And so if you are ready for your freedom journey and to really do that work, come talk to me.
So what are you, what products are you offering specifically that you would like my audience to know about, that you'd like to share with me? If there are any that you want to share, feel free to do so.
Yeah, so products is fascinating. I'm trying to decide where I want to lean into that space. So right now I'm offering individual coaching. I'm doing some group coaching that's largely affinity group spaces. So in the corporate space, your employee resource group type work, and nonprofits, if you want to have an affinity space for Black women who are working in your organization, I can facilitate and do the group work there. And in 2022, we'll be kicking off some organizational coaching for folks who are trying to really look at their recruitment and retention of Black women, and how is that showing up, and how can I support those organizations who have put out, I call them the statement people. How can I support the statement people and who have started their work to now deepen it and really support the freedom and liberation of Black women?
I love what you said about affinity groups, because I literally was having a conversation with someone about that yesterday. You know, I oversaw HR for 20 plus years, so I know all the inner workings. And part of what accelerated my decision to leave the corporate work environment was the events of last year and all the pontificating and posturing and my refusal to be used in that process, right? And one of the things that came up was the question of affinity groups. And I had a very firm position that affinity groups for Black people could not include white people. And I know that probably hurt the feelings of some people, but that was okay with me, and it still is, because I was really about trying to protect the people of color, and specifically the Black people in the organization, who were being traumatized over and over again by this entire event, and then having to come to work and listen to people make statements that did not line up with what they were living with every day at work, and then asking them to go be in affinity groups with white folks so they could be re-traumatized some more. Right?
Yeah, no, we're not
doing
just
like, I'm not going to allow that to happen. Not while I'm here. We're not going to do that, because it will harm people. And I don't feel that we should have to educate you, and neither should we have to talk in front of you about our feelings. Because if 100%. We do, then it starts the tears, not ours, yours, and then it becomes about you and stops being about us. And we're the ones that are suffering, right? Yeah. And so I'm really glad to hear that you will be doing that kind of work, because I really do feel that across a lot of organizations, especially in the nonprofit world, where people believe themselves to be liberal and progressive and not racist, when in fact they are extremely so, I might add, there needs to be more education about, yes, it's great to have affinity employee resource groups, but what should that look like? Right? And what is the impact when you make certain choices about forming these groups on the marginalized communities and groups in your organization that you say you're trying to help, right? But instead you're doing things that are harming them.
Affinity groups have also, in some of the ones that I've seen, been used to kind of keep us compliant, right? So if you do these things, you're going to move up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even in how people did their philanthropy and community service, it was things that were endorsed by the organization. You're not supporting Black-led groups in your community. How is Houseway? Like, how is that possible, right? You have this space, and you're not going to push your organization. And so I'm going to come in and help you think through, like, how are y'all showing up as an affinity group? What do you need? What are the things you're asking of your leadership? And then how do you hold them into accountability in a way that does, you as a group can keep each other safe,
Right.
but it is helping to move the work forward in that accountability.
And so my last question for you is my favorite question, which is, what is one important thing that you have learned about yourself through coaching others?
That I could take my healing journey even deeper. Watching others get free deepened my commitment to my own freedom. And, I've just been trying new tools, and the more I kind of experiment and test what is helping me feel fully in myself, right? Not just this kind of intellectual think with your brain thing that I learned very early being in predominantly white spaces, but how do I lead with my whole body
Mm-hmm.
and really trust my intuition, trust my inner wisdom, trust my ancestral wisdom as I'm making leadership decisions. It has really helped me go deeper. And so coaching has been a gift also to myself.
Well, that's awesome. Kelli, it has been a pleasure talking to you and meeting you. I was very excited when you joined the Facebook group that I have, and you said what you did, and I was like, I have to talk to her. I was like, I have to talk to her immediately.
It is a pleasure to
Yeah,
talk to
we have a
you.
lot of similarities in terms of our, the way that we think, and even what we're trying to do, even though we're coming at it in a different angle. So, you're helping people get free, and I'm helping people get free, but I'm trying to get them out of these organizations with their coins. And I'm like, then you can go get a coach and do the rest of the work, because then you'll have the money to do it. So then you'll have the money to do it. But I'm really excited that we got a chance to talk today. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.